There are countries with millions of people that dream of reaching the World Cup. Countries with huge stadiums, billion-dollar leagues, generations of football history. Yet this summer, one of the smallest nations on earth will stand on the same stage as Argentina, Germany, and the world's greatest football powers. Its population, just 156,000 people. On some weekends, a single Premier League match attracts more fans than the entire population of this country. By every rule of modern football, this should have been impossible. But somehow, this tiny Caribbean island qualified for the World Cup. Not because they were given a place. Not because they got lucky. They earned it. And what makes the story even more unbelievable is that many of the players who made it happen were not even born there. They grew up thousands of miles away in a completely different country, playing in a completely different football system. Yet when the moment came, they chose this island. An island most football fans could not find on a map. An island the football world ignored for decades. This is the story of Curaçao, and how 156,000 people achieved what entire nations could not. To understand how extraordinary this really is, you first need to understand the place itself. Curaçao sits in the southern Caribbean Sea, 65 kilometers north of Venezuela, 61 kilometers long, 38 kilometers wide. Turquoise water, coral reefs. A capital city called Willemstad, famous for its rows of brightly colored Dutch colonial buildings that line the harbor like something out of a painting. It is by any measure a beautiful place. It is also a place with a complicated past. Curaçao spent centuries as a Dutch colonial territory. It was a center of the Atlantic slave trade. Its history is one of racial tension, of division between communities, of a population still working out what it means to share an island. In 1969 there was an uprising. Anti-colonial protests turned violent. Most of Willemstad burned. 2 people died. The government resigned. That history matters. Because what football ended up meaning to this island cannot be understood without it. Today, Curaçao is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Its residents hold Dutch passports. Dutch is one of the official languages. And the connection between this tiny Caribbean island and one of Europe's great footballing nations is exactly what made the impossible possible. Here is something most people do not know about international football. FIFA allows players to represent countries they have family ties to, even if they were not born there. And because Curaçao is part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, footballers born in the Netherlands to Curaçaoan families are eligible to represent the island. Think about what that means. The Netherlands is one of the greatest footballing nations on earth. Total football, 3 European championships, Cruyff, Van Basten, Robben, a country that has produced generational talent for 50 years. And within that system, there are players of Caribbean heritage who grew up in Dutch academies, trained in Dutch youth systems, sometimes even represented the Netherlands at youth level. Players who at some point had to make a choice. Stay in the Dutch system and hope. Or represent an island of 156,000 people and lead. Juninho Bacuna made that choice in 2019. He had played for the Dutch under-18s, under-20s, and under-21s. He was 21 years old. He had years ahead of him to wait for a senior Netherlands call-up that might never come. He chose Curaçao. At that time, he said, "I had a lot of years in front of me to see my chances for the Dutch national team, but I chose the island." His older brother Leandro had done the same thing years before. The captain, the leader, the man who had carried this project through its early years. And then there is Tahith Chong. Born in Willemstad, left the island at 10 years old for the Netherlands, developed at Manchester United's academy, now a winger at Sheffield United in the English Championship. The only member of the squad actually born on the island, back to represent it at a World Cup. These are not players who ended up at Curaçao by default. These are players who looked at the island, looked at what it could become, and decided to be part of something. If stories like this are what you come to moments in football for, hitting subscribe takes 2 seconds and means you never miss the next one. Now, the man who turned all of this potential into a World Cup. Dick Advocaat is 78 years old. He has managed 8 different national teams. He took the Netherlands to the World Cup quarterfinals in 1994. He managed South Korea at the 2006 World Cup in Germany. He has coached at Rangers, PSV, Feyenoord, Zenit St. Petersburg, Fenerbahce. He is, by any measure, one of the most decorated international managers in modern football history. And when the Curaçao Football Federation came to him with the job, he turned it down. The federation was in crisis, administrative chaos, under scrutiny from FIFA itself. Advocaat looked at the situation and said no. But something changed. The chaos settled, the federation sorted itself, and Advocaat came back. And what he found was a group of players with more passion than structure, more soul than system. We never had anything to complain about regarding the passion and commitment of those guys, he said, but we had to provide a foundation, we had to establish organization. Here is the thing that makes Advocaat's approach to this job remarkable. He did not try to turn Curaçao into a Dutch team. He was initially uncomfortable with the players dancing and singing before games. It was not what he was used to. Phase 1 was a statement. 4 games, 4 wins, 15 goals scored, not one dropped point on the road to topping their second-round group, defeating Barbados, Aruba, St. Lucia and Haiti along the way. This was not a team that had arrived hopping to survive. This was a team that had arrived to qualify. The final round of CONCACAF qualifying was harder. Group B: Curaçao against Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago and Bermuda. Jamaica were favorites, they had World Cup pedigree from 1998, they had home advantage, they had a passionate fanbase and genuine quality. And Curaçao matched them every step of the way. 7 wins from 10 games, 3 draws, not a single defeat across the entire campaign. But everything came down to the final night. November 18, 2025. Kingston, Jamaica. Curaçao needed just a point to qualify. Jamaica needed a win to keep their hopes alive. In Dick Advocaat, what happened in Kingston that night was the kind of football that turns people into fans for life. Jamaica hit the woodwork 3 times in the second half. 3 times. The ball struck the post or the bar and came back out. 3 separate occasions where a different bounce meant Jamaica went to the World Cup and Curaçao went home. Then deep into stoppage time, the referee pointed to the spot. Penalty to Jamaica. The moment that could have ended everything. VAR reviewed it. The room where fans were watching back in Rotterdam went silent. The streets of Willemstad held their breath. The penalty was overturned. No goal, no restart, the final whistle. 0-0. In Curaçao were going to the World Cup. The scenes that followed were some of the most joyful in recent football history. Impossibility that is made possible, said winger Kenji Gora. It's literally impossible for such a small island, such a small 150,000 population, and now to go to the biggest pinnacle of football is unbelievable. Football does not fix history, but sometimes it gives people a moment. And this was theirs. If this story gave you something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. These are the stories moments in football exists to tell. At the World Cup draw in Washington in December 2025, Curaçao were placed in Group E. Germany, Ecuador, Ivory Coast. Germany, 4-time world champions. Ecuador, a team that reached the knockout rounds as recently as 2022. Ivory Coast, one of the most powerful footballing nations in Africa. There is no easy game in that group, there may be no points in that group. And the squad that walks out against Germany in Philadelphia this summer includes a winger developed at Manchester United, a defender from Manchester City, and a captain who has played professional football in Italy, Scotland, England, and Turkey for 15 years. They are not naive. They are not there by accident. They are there because they earned it. 156,000 people. Smaller than Cambridge. Smaller than hundreds of city districts that will never send a team to a World Cup. India never qualified, 1.4 billion people. China qualified once. Italy missed 2 World Cups in a row. And Curaçao, this tiny, colorful, complicated, beautiful island 65 kilometers off the coast of Venezuela, will walk out at the World Cup this summer. The smallest nation ever to do it. Led by the oldest manager ever to do it. With a squad that chose to represent a place most of the world could not find on a map. And did it anyway. This has been Moments in Football.